Do you want to have more Afspraak with me? No? What a pity. But you will stay at least for this Hints and Theories video, won't you? Welcome back to a new Hints and Theories video, this time about episode number 3. By the way, if you want to make sure that you do not miss out on any further hints or theories, then make sure to check out my Instagram and my TikTok, and of course also please subscribe to this channel here. And also stay tuned until the end of the video, because then we have to talk about some very important things concerning this episode and the following one. Now let's jump into episode number 3, which was called Spelbreker. This could be translated as Spoilsport. And who were the ones who spoiled an entire assignment by not choosing the money but going for the jokers? Yeah, Soy, Jure and Daniel. We will head back to them in a moment. First of all, I want to remind you that if you want to know what the title of the episode or the titles of the assignments mean translated, then check out the description box below. I will translate you all of the names there, and sometimes that could be a very interesting hint, or at least it's a very interesting information for you to keep in the back of your mind. By the way, did you listen closely to Rick's speech in the beginning of the episode? Because he mentioned the poker face again. Yep, the poker face we talked a lot about after episode number 1. And let's think about who could need a really good poker face in this episode. Again, the 3 boys in the end who chose the jokers. So maybe a hint to the group of them, but there's some more we need to talk about them when we come to task number 3. First of all, one more thing I want to mention in general before we dive into the tasks. And that is that I have the feeling that we are a little bit back to the roots, aren't we? Like 3 tasks and physical money coming up next week, and something I always want to have an eye on, in between scenes, as I call them. So scenes in which the candidates just interact with each other, which have little to nothing to do with the actual assignments. Just scenes in which they talk to each other while having lunch or so, and in which I personally like to see how they react. And yeah, there were a lot of these scenes this time, compared especially to episode number 1, where we had like none of them at all. So I really have the feeling we are slowly back in the actual Wie is the Mole mood. Now let's jump to task number 1, the one with the quads and that beautiful landscape. Really, I thought it was such a pretty location they chose for this task. But the mole, well, wasn't really active. Or, like, they earned the highest amount possible in that assignment. And that leads to the question whether or not the mole just couldn't really, well, play his strategy, or if the mole actually wanted to earn money. We will talk about it a little bit later. First of all, we could translate the title of that assignment as about leading. So about taking the lead, about leading the group. And if we think about who was, well, trying to lead the group, then 2 names pop up in my head immediately, and that ones are Nabil and Daniel. Of course, Nabil was kind of doing his own thing a little bit in between, just as Anik as well, but I had the feeling that they were a bit more dominant than the others in trying to lead the group. Could be a hint to them, as the mole could also be just a proof that they are trying to play a successful game. And according to that, Anke and Daniel were the ones who said, like, we already had 7 stations, we earned all the money that was to be earned, let's not head out again, let's not ruin everything. So again, either a more strategy in appearing as a good candidate or actually being a good candidate. Task number 2 was one I personally liked a lot, and I would have liked to see it completely and not in the shortened version we got to see. And there are some things we need to talk about. The first thing is the possible strategy of them all. So the best way to keep money out of the pot in this task is by coming up with clever definitions of the words. And the teams who did the best were Anik and Jure and Anke and Nabil. Of course, at the same time they earned points, and the team with the most points would, well, gain the jokers. And that of course isn't that interesting for them all, but it also doesn't hurt if it means at the same time that there is no more money in the pot. But at the same time, Daniel and Sander were the team who actually earned the least money. If I remember it correctly, they only earned €50 and all the other teams earned way more. Then there is the first definition Anke and Nabi came up with. They chose the word model as definition, and if we have a closer look on that word, then we can rearrange the letters to the mall. The mall. And to push you a little bit deeper into an Anke tunnel vision probably, she also has to do a lot with models in her job. She's chief editor of Elle Netherlands, so a fashion magazine, and that of course has a lot to do with working with models. So it could be a brilliant hint to Anke. But there's also a hint to Nabil in this task as well, and that has to do with the Målafspraak. So the last word, and that meant blind date. And Nabil is the only one who immediately realizes that blind date could refer to the mole who is blind as well. You know, the animal mole is blind. And his reaction just seems so well thought through and not very spontaneous and not very surprised that this, along with his move like, oh yeah, the mole is blind, could be a hint to Nabil. Last but not least, assignment number 3. And that was the one on the ship. And first of all, we have to remember the name of the episode, which was Spelbreker. And in that task they had to use icebreakers to get to the, well, hints and the keys. And there's one scene in which we get to see Ranomi, which is pretty long. So the scene is pretty long and she's very busy with breaking the ice. Of course, Anik also gives wrong instructions there. But yeah, it's very focused on Ranomi breaking the ice. So maybe a, well, word hint to Ranomi. But there are some more interesting things in the task going on as well, and somehow they are very concerned around Nabil. The first thing is that Nabil, who's teamed up with Sander, is, well, completely ignoring that one box. So he's like walking by 2 times and not seeing that box, which stood like more or less right in front of him. And the second and even more interesting thing is that they were the team who found the most important instruction in that task. The information that you could earn jokers instead of the money. So now think about it. If you were a candidate, what would you do? Would you really tell the others about that option, or would you try to be the team to get to Rick? Because I personally think it's the better version to not tell the others and try to be the one to get to Rick and earn those jokers, because there's no physical money. They can't, well, prove if you really chose for the money. So that's the best option to earn jokers, which you really need for the test. But Nabil and Sander decided to tell the others and share that important information. Well, in general, Sander seems like a very honest person and he's out of the game now, so let's focus on Nabil. And I personally still think Nabil is suspicious, so here comes my theory about it, and that is that he wants to make sure that there's no money added to the pot if he's the mole. And that also means he doesn't need the jokers. So it's the better version to give that information to the others, especially because Daniel and Soy and Jure, they are all pretty into the game and pretty well focused on getting as far as possible in the show. So they would definitely choose for the jokers. And that is a perfect way to make sure that there's no money added and at the same time distract the others. As soon as the others will realize that there's no money added, they of course will blame the boys who chose the jokers. In the end, it was Nabil who initiated it by sharing the information, but the focus will be on the other three who earned the jokers. So that is actually a quite good way for a mole to make sure that there's no money in the pot and at the same time not be the one who is obviously responsible for it. That was all about the tasks, but there are some more things we need to talk about. The first thing is we have to listen closely to Xander's test this time. So Xander is the one who had to leave the game, but we get to hear very interesting information while we see him filling out his test. Because he says that he's sure that there's one person who can't be the mole, and that is Daniel. Now there are two options, as so often in Wie is the Mole. The first thing is that Daniel is the mole and that this could be a hint to Daniel. So by saying, oh, he isn't it, we know that Xander didn't fill out his test on Daniel. He didn't answer the questions regarding Daniel, and that of course led to him leaving the game. Or, option number two, the production team wants us to think exactly that, and we have to turn that logic around, and it is a hint to the fact that Daniel isn't a mole. So, turned around psychology, logic. There are some people in the Wie is the Mole community who are very into that turned around logic, and that's definitely a hint for them. I just wanted to share that one with you. Let me know what you think about it. Is it a hint to Daniel as a mole, or more a hint to Daniel as the candidate? And not in this episode, but in the last two ones and in the upcoming one, we are still looking for rubber ducks. If you do not know what I'm talking about, then make sure to head to my Instagram or to my TikTok, because I've explained the whole rubber duck situation there, and this is definitely going to keep us busy next week. And there are so many ideas about those rubber ducks that I'm really curious which one will be the correct one in the end. I will try to give you some of those rubber duck hints so far sometime during the week, either here on YouTube or on the other social networks. And last but definitely not least, we need to talk about what is most likely going to happen next week. We already got to see that the physical money will appear. And it also seems like that the candidates have the chance to play some money out of the pot. And I almost regret saying that, because I know that some of you are definitely against that way to play the game, but it does appear like that, and that would also explain why the mole wasn't that super active so far, and why we had, assignments like this time where the highest amount possible was earned. And I just want to remember you that the pot has now reached 8,050 euro. That's incredibly much for the third episode for Wie is the Mole. So yeah, it definitely seems like there will be a task coming up where there is money played out of the pot. I know that some of you really don't like that. Maybe you're lucky and it just appears like that, and in the end it's completely different. As always, Wie is the Mole likes to surprise us, but it definitely is an option. That were all hints and theories to episode number 3 so far. I'm really curious what you think about them. Let me know that in the comments below, and also tell me who is your main suspect at the moment. If you want to make sure not to miss any further hints and theories videos, then please subscribe, follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and you can still join our pool on the Widm app or our Facebook group. Until next week, bye!